Okay, so that's a brief tour of one of the ethical challenges to give you a feel for how they work. Let me make one more point about this particular challenge, and maybe the best way of doing that is to go back to the report for that round. So many, if not most, of the ethical challenges um, depending on the student's decisions, have consequences for later rounds. In the case of this blowout preventer testing challenge, it turns out for Sam that this component of his blowout preventer that could have been faulty wasn't. It's in fact good. And same thing for Amy. She decided to test, so now she knows that that critical component is working properly. However, Haley does not know that. She has decided not to test. So it's possible that if she had tested, the result would have shown that her blowout preventer has a fault associated with it. Now, if indeed it does have a fault associated with it, if there is a faulty component to the blowout preventer, uh, that increases the chances of a blowout, all other things being equal. Whether or not the student tested and knows the result, if their blowout preventer is faulty, that will increase significantly the chances of a blowout in later rounds. And the student won't know unless they do a test whether or not this component, this critical component, is faulty. So from the student point of view, it's possible to avoid doing the test, not do it at all, save that money, and not have that opportunity cost. And it appear as if there are no bad consequences. Uh, and in most cases, there aren't. However, if a student who doesn't test has a faulty component and doesn't know about it, unbeknownst to them, that is going to increase their chances of a blowout, and that will increase their chance of a blowout until um, they overhaul. And whenever an overhaul happens, this critical component is automatically replaced with a functioning one. But a student could go until that point, and if they don't ever do an overhaul, they could go to the end of the game with a significantly higher risk of blowing out. They may or may not see that happen in the sense of they may or may not blow out. It only This faulty component only increases the probability of a risk of a blowout. It doesn't guarantee that there is a blowout. And many of the ethical challenges are like this. The decisions that the student makes uh, affect the probabilities, the downstream, the later probabilities of bad things happening. But the student may not see that in any particular dramatic or obvious way. And so it may seem to some students as if their decision doesn't matter. But actually, it matters quite a bit, and it matters in a way that is very similar to how decisions matter in the business world. In most cases, when a manager makes a business decision, they don't necessarily know right away or unambiguously what the impact of that decision has been. Okay, so I just wanted to make that point about the consequences of testing or not testing here for the blowout preventer in this blowout preventer test challenge. Again, whether the student tests or not does not affect what's actually going on in terms of the health of their blowout preventer. It just allows them to know if they do test what the health of their blowout preventer is. If they don't test, they are essentially deciding not to get that information and essentially to accept the consequences of that. Okay.